start off with Russell Miller. He's currently the Vice President of Gas Supply and Marketing for Cody Natural Gas Corporation
and been a member of Weatherstock and Gas Company, LLC. He has over
25 years of industry experience working with producers, gathering companies, interstate pipelines. You guys can do right.
Yeah.
And has an associate in applied science and computer graphic technology from community college. Okay. Up next, Jeff Heller. He's the chairman of the Steuben County Landowners Coalition Political Action Committee. Chairman of the Steuben County Landowners Coalition Executive Committee. Up next, Dr. Mike Orangello. Dr. Mike is a psychologist in private practice in Corning. He's a former chairman of the published writer for the local newspapers, and he's on frankly speaking every once in a while. Up next, Dr. Scott Klein. Dr. Klein holds a B.S. in Geological Science from Penn State, as well as on board, so we heard from earlier. So there is our panel. So let's start with our questions and answers.
My name is Jim Sindoma, and I'm for fracking. In fact, I usually have a pro-fracking t-shirt. I thought the film was very well done with one area when they did the demolition, the dynamite. And I don't have a demolition expert. I actually worked in the metals industry where we would use dynamite to shape metal. And I'm afraid that somebody who has an expertise in demolition would see that that was just kind of a can drop it down. So if you just throw a blanket over top of it, the charge is going to go out. I'm saying that it's probably still wouldn't have done anything, but somebody with expertise in demolition would criticize that. So I don't have, again, I don't have a license in demolition, but I did work with somebody where we shape metals that way. In order to get them shaped, you had to cover the explosives. So I don't have a certification, but I just stay at holiday myself.
Anybody want to answer that?
Yeah. Is it working? I'm not sure if there was exactly a question there, and I think the effectiveness of what they were showing there was really more in showing how the well is constructed. We don't set off explosives like that in the well to begin with, so it's sort of irrelevant from that standpoint. But it did show you the multiple sections of steel casing and cement, which is really a very important demonstration, and that showed that. And I think it's something that made me go into a little more detail in New York, especially how we're going to construct those wells, because what you saw in the movie is going to be very similar. We drill a surface casing that is 20 inches typically. We'll have about 6 to 10 inches of cement behind that, down to about 50 to 100 feet. And then we go in with our surface casing, which is drilled next with a 17.5-inch drill bit. We set 13 3/8 inch casing. That is the most important casing string in the well. That goes down to the typically 75 feet below the deepest freshwater drinking source. We don't want to go any deeper than that. We don't want to get into shallow gas zones. And we test as we're drilling for any indications of methane down to that point. Very important. If we do find any methane at that point, we have to call in the DEC, but come up with a plan to deal with that. And we cement that surface casing to the surface. It's typically 4.5 inches of cement behind that pipe, tied into the conductor pipe. And that is what's protecting our groundwater. That's the first set of defense. That's the most important thing. And we test that casing, pressure test it, and then we drill slightly below it, and then we pressure up at the bottom of that to make sure that the cement is holding the pressure. We cannot proceed drilling until we are 100% sure that that's been taken care of. Then we go down, if that passes inspection, we get permission to go ahead and drill. We drill another smaller diameter hole with intermediate casing, cement again. We pressure test the cement again against pressure. That has to hold. Again, if it doesn't, we have to take remedial action. We have to have approval to drill deeper. And we finally do the next string, which is our production string. So by the time you're done, you have 4 to 5, depending on the well construction, just as you saw in that video, 4 or 5 layers of steel and cement. And that is more than sufficient to take care of the problems.
Any other questions from the audience here? Ladies and gentlemen?
George Pryor, we're landowners in Hartsville, but when a driller cements, is there an issue or a concern about whether or not that cement is contiguous or whether there are spaces left in there, and if so, what do you do about it?
Yes, that's me again. Well, for the conductor pipe and the surface casing that I talked about, which are the 2 key things to protecting the groundwater, the first line of defense, we have to cement that to the surface plus 25% extra returns. In other words, we pump the cement into the volume of the hole that's calculated in the annulus, and we continue pumping the cement until it actually comes out at the surface. So we have a continuous sheath of cement. In addition to that, we take an extra precaution. We run what's called centralizers. One of the keys to cementing job is to keep that pipe centered in the center of the hole. Otherwise, the pipe could slough up against the side of the hole because it is flexible when it's a long string. So we run these centralizers that keeps the pipe in the center so that when we're running the cement, we can get a good even fill around it. In addition to that, as I said, we pressure test the casing, and then we drill a little bit deeper, and we build up pressure at the bottom of the casing so that we make sure that there's no leakage. If there was a void area behind the pipe, we would see a leakage up at that pressure, and we don't want to see that. In addition, we also can run cement bond logs. They're required on both the intermediate and the production string. Cement bond log is an acoustic device which sends out acoustic waves, and we take the readings as they bounce back from the surrounding formation, and we can make an interpretation of that. If we see void spots, you will see it on that particular well log. So it's a combination of actual getting your cement to the surface, looking at the returns, doing the cement bond log, pressure testing it. So there's multiple overlapping tests that are done.
I think I will comment on the next obvious question here. What are the main differences between the Pennsylvania regulations about drilling and the expected New York regulations about drilling? If anybody wants, because that's a question that always comes up after this.
Well, I'm not an authority on the Pennsylvania regulations exactly. I know the New York regulations very well, and I've worked in many other states. They're basically, Pennsylvania has beefed up their regulations since they had some problems a few years ago, but our proposed regulations from 3 years ago were already, as far as well construction's concerned, we're already up to speed with what Pennsylvania's just done. So there's very little difference at this point. In fact, there are several groups like the Marcellus Shale Coalition and another group, Appalachian, that's based of the Appalachian operators that have put together best practices in well cementing and construction, and they're very consistent now with what New York regulations are, and the wells that are being done in Pennsylvania now are done very similar to New York's proposed regulations. Surface casing to the surface, intermediate casing, production casing.
I don't need a microphone. I wonder if anybody can address the ad valorem tax, please.
Can you hear me all right if I go without this? The coalition has gone around the county, gone to quite a few of the towns, trying to explain Title V of New York State's tax code. Pennsylvania has nothing like this. Well, Article 13 is an attempt, but it's still not the same thing. The production of a gas well is taxed in New York State on an ad valorem basis. In other words, it'll be taxed like a piece of property. And that money all stays local. That's the big difference here in New York State. It gets split just like our ad valorem tax, your ad valorem tax on your home. It gets split between the town, the county, and the lion's share to the school district. The only example I can give you, there was a well in Thurston a few years ago, and that well produced the first year revenue income for the town, the county, and the school district equivalent to somebody building a $16 million home in Thurston. That money stayed in Thurston. That's critical that you understand that. When I was at the Dansville hearing, one of the township supervisors said, "There's nothing in it for our town." I'm like, what? Title V is the ad valorem tax from the production of a gas well, costs the residents nothing. The gas company pays it, not the landowner, nobody else pays it.
One other thing I'd like to mention about this, and we really get involved with this in Albany. Albany's always talking about a severance tax, or adding the severance tax, or taking away the ad valorem tax. We really disagree with that. We want this money to stay in the communities where the drilling is. That helps offset some of what we have to put up with. It's good to get it to the school districts and to help us out. If that money goes to Albany and the severance tax, it's going to get out of ours and it's going to go to New York City. We're never going to see it. This money needs to stay here in the communities where the drilling is taking place. And we've really got to speak up about that, really fight for that in Albany. Keep it here and keep the ad valorem.
I can add to that a little bit. From the utility side, we built a compressor station in Cape in 2010, and the value of that compressor station was assessed at $15 million. So we had a tremendous amount of tax revenue, property tax revenue, school tax revenue, because we built that station. We built that station because we're connected to Marcellus Shale Gas in Pennsylvania. We're bringing that gas into our customers. What doesn't go to our customers goes into the interstate pipeline. So our customers get first dibs. They get lower cost gas, and the people in the community where that compressor station is built, it's a tremendous tax benefit.
Could I jump in on this? 4.7 million homes in New York State are heated by natural gas. 56% of all homes nationally are heated by natural gas. If I'm right about this, the price of natural gas has dropped at least 50%. Easily. Right, this is an economic stimulus that's real and it's in all our pockets. This is money we can go out and buy goods and services as we choose, and that money will drive the economy. Right, it will create demand, which will create jobs. So if people say that natural gas development just benefits landowners or perhaps gas workers, it's not true. If you heat your home with natural gas, you're getting a benefit.
Another way to understand the taxation is to look at the other utilities. You've got electric lines, you've got railroads that go through your town. You've got telephone poles. All of these things that go through the town are assessed, just like your house is assessed, or your vacant lot or your farm is assessed. That assessment on the utilities is done in Albany. Your local town assessor does not set that assessment. The assessment of the value or the amount that is going to be, the tax is going to be levied upon, is set out of Albany, fed back to your local town assessor, and the assessor levies that assessment against that particular utility. In our case, the gas is going to be based upon the volume of gas that is actually produced, or the value of the gas that is actually produced in the town. That bill, then when it comes out for the school tax in the fall, the town and county tax in January, or your village or city taxes in June or July, they get sent to the gas companies and they pay it right to the city or the town or the county. That's what we're talking about. Great system, doesn't work that way anywhere else except here in New York State. And we absolutely agree, everybody agrees with that upstate, and we're very thankful for the joint landowners for carrying the ball to Albany and fighting to keep it that way, because that's the way the money stays here, for the gas.
I just wanted to ask, I heard that everybody's involved in this, going to compress the natural gas and send it overseas, we're going to market it, what we have here, just to help everybody else. We're not going to get the full benefit of having that gas here to, all of it going to our factories. Is there any truth to that, or if it's going to be compressed into a liquid?
I can speak to that to some degree. Right now, the only export terminal in the United States is in Alaska. It's also one of the oldest LNG terminals in the United States. There are other companies that own import terminals right now, Cove Point, Chesapeake Bay is one of them, and companies are actively seeking to get export licenses so they can take compressed natural gas or liquefied natural gas and tankers and get it overseas. It's several years off, and I think you're right on it in the sense of saying that if we take that and turn it into an international BTU, which is what fuel oil and propane are, then basically we're competing with the guys from China and India for that BTU. So long term, I think there are a lot of people in this country that don't want to have this international BTU. They want to keep it a domestic BTU. They want to keep it in our country and keep it for us. And I think that's a larger debate that we have to have. I don't know of anybody in this room that's actively pushing to get this commodity exported overseas. I think we're talking about producing more of it for our own use in our own municipalities and our own towns, and using it regionally and getting a benefit from that from a taxation standpoint and from an environmental standpoint. And what's left over going to the larger metropolitan area. That's the way we're set up in our utility, basically, the public service commission told us. And the FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, said, you can take that gas out of Pennsylvania, you can take it across state borders, but it's got to go to your own customers first, and if there's any left over, you need to put it into the interstate pipe. But that's something you need to be aware of. You need to keep up on top of that. And I don't think people want to turn natural gas into an internationally traded commodity, because it will affect the value. The market will be
We're going to get, now depending on the Middle East for oil, we need to take our stuff and make a benefit, like anything. You look out for your own family first. I mean, everybody starts protectionism, but hey, we got to look out for ourselves in this country, and if the independent from being held hostage, these gas prices, they really want to
We are working very hard to increase the usage here.
Louder, please.
We're working very hard to increase our domestic usage.
We're already recently come up to 50%, an equal amount of electrical generation with coal. We want to start using it in transportation. We have a lot of markets to develop here in the United States with this vast abundance we have. And even if you do increase that, we have a large supply. If we end up exporting, it still costs a lot of money to liquefy and export. We're still going to have a domestic price that's probably considerably lower than the price is going to be in China and Asia. Right now, the natural gas price in China and Asia and Europe is $13 to $16 an MCF versus $3 here. That's giving us tremendous economic advantage in manufacturing here, especially in heavy energy use. And that's going to drive other jobs that we haven't even talked about being directly related to oil and gas exploration.
I'm Shanette Squinover, and I totally agree that we I don't think we can ship our natural gas overseas until we all have natural gas. We burn oil, and a lot of people are burning other sources, wood and so forth. We don't have natural gas, and we aren't alone. I'm hoping that you really will soon start expanding your line so that we can all have natural gas. It would be so much more benefit for us. And do you have plans that, we live in the Lindley area, and we have taken up a petition, but is there anything else that we need to do?
Mrs. Schooner, you're putting me on the spot. I've got your petition. What you're talking about is the job of the LDC, local distribution. The well drillers and producers don't deal directly with customers. They want to take their gas to market. I'm part of the market. So I have rules and regulations I have to adhere to. And this year, for the first time in a long time, is a year where we've got so many construction jobs going on that we have difficulty keeping up with them. Primarily because everybody's in the same boat that you are that doesn't currently have natural gas. They want gas expanded to them. So they have to do the economics to justify the expansion they made. And if you do that, typically the way it works is you got your paperwork in by your own hard work. And I applaud you for that. You made my job a lot easier. But you got it into me at the beginning of the summer. And we typically prepare for the construction that we're going to do in the summer period the winter before, so we can line up all of the contractors. So what I'm telling you in a nice way is I've got your paperwork during your queue. You're probably not going to see gas until next spring. Don't be, keep after them.
Would you gentlemen please do me a favor along with a lot of other people? Use that mic.
Yes, sir.
So we can't understand. I can't understand. My dad always said I was deaf in one ear and couldn't hear anything out of the other.
I'm not saying that we should export, but I think I see where if you could export, once we're taken care of here at home, and do that on a cost competitive basis, you really would, I think, impact in a positive way national security, because you're taking away a revenue source from overseas, terrorists.
You can leave it there. I got a big voice. My name is Nathan Congress. I live in Truthland, New York. I want to go back to the production and the completion of the wells. I spent 7 years in the Texas and Oklahoma oil and gas field, so I have some knowledge. What I think is important for a lot of people to understand, when you talk about pressure testing in your completion cycle, what level do you pressure up to beyond the level that you frack at? Because I realized that when you do a pressure test, you go way beyond what you're going to run for frack and what that gas well is going to produce for outline pressure. And most people don't get the concept that once you get past the cementing stage, you're not even putting the level of pressure against that completed well that you tested at. So what are those pressure numbers approximately?
Well, you have to design your well to withstand the maximum amount of pressure that you're planning to use in a frac job. That's the bottom line. So if you're going to, for instance, pressures can range from 5 to 10,000 psi on a big frac job. You design your casing that it can more than withstand that, and you test your casing up to you don't test your, obviously you don't test your casing past the design standpoint, but you test it up to about 95% of that, or up to the maximum amount of pressure you expect to use in your frac job. You have to, people also don't understand that when you do the frac job, it only lasts a matter of a few hours per stage. We've reached the maximum pressure on the pumping early on, and as soon as that rock begins to crack, the pressure drops immediately. So we've already encountered our highest pressure right at that point, and we propagate the fluid out into the formation. Pressures drop, it stabilizes. We add the proppant at the desired stage because we don't want to prop open all the fractures. We just want to concentrate on our Marcellus. We prop open that few hundred feet. We release that pressure, again, within a few hours. Pressure drops back to natural formation because we're not really adding that much to a large formation like the Marcellus. And then we flow it back. The pressure in the formation from then on drops every day we produce. So that's the nature of it. And people are always concerned about, well, are we pressurizing the formation and is it going to be driven to the groundwater? No, the well bore is the natural pressure sink. We are opening that well bore through our tubing to the surface, and so all fluids want to flow toward the well bore, and the pressure drops continuously during the whole operation.
The latest thing that I heard out of the governor was that they were wanting local communities to decide.
Hello? The last thing I heard was that the governor wanted local communities to decide. He wanted local control. He was relying on Article 9 of the New York State Constitution, which is the home rule section. So far as I know.
So a county can vote not to have any fracking done in the county area or just in the area.
Okay, there's some history on this. There have been some townships across the state which have passed local laws to ban drilling in their town. Two of them, the first two that did that, were sued. One by a landowner, one by a drilling company. Those suits were resolved in favor of the town at the local level. They're now up on appeal at the appellate level. Most of the attorneys and judges that I talked to believe that it's going to be stricken because they believe that the issue of development of this type of natural resource is something that's going to be determined by the state and not by the locality. That's still up in the air. There isn't any requirement for any referendum. What the governor said was more of a political thing that he's thinking about receiving applications from areas along the Pennsylvania border, which would be the 5 counties in western New York that are right along the border that are still within the Marcellus, Steuben being the farthest one west of that group, and only in those areas that are receptive. As a result of that, the Joint Landowners Coalition and the Steuben County Landowners Coalition specifically has been active in going to all of the towns, asking the town boards to pass a simple resolution indicating that they're not going to ban fracking and that they might be receptive to gas drilling under the auspices of the Department of Environmental Conservation. That has been very well received in Steuben County in the areas most likely to be produced for the Marcellus Shale. There have been 2 towns that have gone the other way in Steuben. Neither of those are in the Marcellus Fairway. None of the towns in the Marcellus Fairway have indicated that they would not be receptive, although there are some towns that have just simply decided not to take a vote on it. Most of the towns around here have passed it, have passed the resolution. In our coalition, we call them green, we color them green, and most of our towns are green in Steuben County. We're ready to go. Does that answer your question? The question is whether there's been a precedent already passed that would prevent the locality from interfering with the rights of the landowner. I will guarantee you one thing. If the appeal that's presently going is resolved in favor of the towns, that they have the power to do that. And if they then decide to ban fracking, there's going to be some very serious lawsuits against the towns and probably against the town board members. Been going on for a long time. This isn't new stuff. It's been going on for 150 years, and you know, we're just on the tail end of it. That's all. In the back, way in the back. Yeah.
We've heard on the film, and we've also, I guess, just seen when you go around to a well, they have placards up that say, you know, this well takes 4 million or 10 million or 12 million gallons of water. It sounds like a big number. Is there any history anywhere that tells us that withdrawing this amount of water from groundwater has any adverse effect?
Well, the thing we have to understand about water is that the use of water, in particular, let's take this area, the general area, is all controlled by the Susquehanna River Basin Commission. There's a commission made up of members from New York, Pennsylvania, wherever the watershed goes through. They control the amount of water that's allowed to be taken out for any purpose, whether it's industrial, city, or whatever. Let's take the town of Irwin, for example. The town of Irwin had to go through the state DEC and the Susquehanna Watershed Commission. Took them a year and a half probably to get their permit to draw up to 1 million gallons a day out of their aquifer. They're not drawing out of the river, they're drawing out of the aquifer. The commission monitors the aquifer. They monitor the amount of water in the river. If you have a drought and the river goes down, they put a stop on what can come out of there. They maintain a healthy level of water in the rivers. They can control it by the dams. They can control it by the amount of water that comes out. It's well controlled and monitored. This is not a haphazard thing. It's not a risk at all. And the thing you have to remember is that the well drilling isn't using as much water as golf courses.
So you're saying, just to repeat, it's a regulated activity and regulated monthly or daily or weekly is pump action?
It's regulated regularly, yes, that's correct.
All right, thank you.
I just have a question. The price of natural gas has gotten so low now. Has that affected the drilling possibilities for New York because the price is so low? And number two, what is the current timetable to begin drilling in New York? Because I'm a side beneficiary of the drilling in Pennsylvania, and they come up and especially the waters come in. And I do their shirts, and they get real stiff so that the sparks fly off of them. And you wouldn't believe the amount of business we picked up because of that. So, just curious. Okay, the first question that you asked was regarding what effect lower gas prices has on gas drilling itself. And what we've seen is there's been a definite slowdown in drilling. Obviously, the reason for that is they don't want to overproduce the resource. When we look at gas prices on the market at the end of March this year, it was $1.99 an MCF. About 4 years ago, in the same time, it was around $11 an MCF. So 4 years ago, people were really just starting to drill like crazy. You were starting to see a lot of activity, and that's when a lot of these rules came in place because there were no rules before that. So it's the classic case of supply and demand. It's also great that there is that classic case of supply and demand because the producers are backing off. You're going to see prices go back up. The market just settled at $3.08. And I think in December, you're probably going to see gas prices between $4 and $5. And what we're hearing from the producers is if they're at between $4 and $5, that's the price point where they can produce that and make the margin they need to make to pay that well off quickly enough. So that's a good thing. That means they're gonna drill more, they're not gonna go nuts drilling, they're not gonna overproduce, but you're gonna see that steady between $4 and $6 price range. We're gonna have lower cost gas, they're gonna produce steadily, they're gonna buy chain link fence and get their shirts dry cleaned at your place. You know, with regards to when drilling will occur in New York State, I'm the eternal optimist, and I've been wrong 3 or 4 times, so maybe one of these gentlemen here have a better feel for when that's gonna happen than I do.
We're all guessing. We have within the Steuben County Landowners Coalition Political Action Committee, we have a pool on the date that Governor Cuomo will announce he's going to start permitting in Pennsylvania. The ultimate optimist was yours truly. I picked June 8th. I think I missed. But we don't know. I mean, Cuomo has said things that absolutely say he's going to do it. The only thing holding him back is one of his strongest voting lobbies, one of his strongest blocks is the environmental lobby. And he knows that when he announces this, you know what's going to happen. I mean, he's going to get flack like he can't imagine, and he knows it. So he's got to face up to that. I think the man has national ambitions. I think he's looking at the White House, or at least a run at the White House. That's traditional from New York. And if he wants to do that, he needs this, because New York State's a fiscal basket case. We need gas drilling. I mean, Pennsylvania's Department of Labor just announced at the end of 2011, 238,000 jobs were created in Pennsylvania related to the gas industry. We get headline stories up here if an industry is going to come in and provide 300 jobs. Oh my God! There is nothing that compares economically for what the gas industry can do for our area. We need it. We all want it to be safe, folks. We're the landowners. We see the quote, devastation that the environmentalists see. We're going to see it first. We want it safe. But this state needs it bad.
I got a question for you. I have the answer, but I have a question. What's the unemployment rate in Steuben County? Anybody know?
9.1.
9.8. Recent Department of Labor study. What's the unemployment rate in Broome and Chemung counties? Anybody know? 9.2. Just recently, there was a study by Wells Fargo economists projecting another 200,000 jobs in Pennsylvania. 65,000 is the estimate in Ohio, right? And the steel industry, as you saw in the movie, added 1,500 jobs in Youngstown, and that industry was dead. We just have to do this. Just to reiterate what Jeff said, we just got to do this. In my mind, economics is a lot of common sense. So let me throw some common sense at you. So let's say we have one employee, a new employee from the gas company. That individual is going to need a place to live, right? A house or an apartment. They're going to need dry cleaning services, right? They're going to need a restaurant to eat in. They're going to need just all kinds of things. And who knows, maybe the services of a psychologist. I'd be happy to see him. That'd be no problem. But you know, this kind of thing has a ripple effect throughout the economy, and that's the common sense of this.
Take questions. Raise your hand if you have any more questions, just so we can mark it.
Before the panel has some questions, I walk around and note that if you want to ask you questions, if you have any prepared speeches, do that.
I don't have a prepared speech, but I'm an attorney. I can talk all night and put you to sleep pretty quickly. But as an overview, I would just I just want to say one more time that there's a group of people out there that is the Steuben County Landowners Coalition,
You know, started by a guy like Ken Knowles back there, who's been our leader from day one and still is our leader. And I don't know anybody that's worked more thousands of hours in the last 4 years than Ken. Although I know at the state level, at the Landowners Coalition, at the state level, those guys are tireless. Everybody is unpaid. Everybody's volunteer, even me. So I would just encourage you to check us out on the website, SCLOC, Steuben County Landowners Coalition.com, SCLOC.com. Check us out. Join up if you got any land.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead and get her.
How many counties are we talking about in this coalition? I know you never mentioned Schuyler County. Is there a reason for that?
Steuben, Schuyler, Allegheny, Chemung, and Yates.
Right, those are the people.
In our coalition, we call it the Steuben County Landowners Coalition. We have all of the, we have also Schuyler County. They have their own coalition. They are associated with us. And your leadership sits on our political action committee, so we really are just one coalition there. We have members from Yates County, we have members from Allegheny, and some from Chemung. But basically, you know, we started out as Steuben, so I call it Steuben, but you're absolutely right. We have a very large contingent from Schuyler County, and they're very important to us.
Talked a lot about the various governmental agencies and concern involvement with them. I just wondered if you could address a little bit about if you talked with the gas companies and what's the relationship with them.
The question was, we talked about our relationship with the government agencies, but what are our relationships with the gas companies?
Our coalition doesn't have any relationship with the gas companies at this point. We're trying to. We're trying to get them in here, get them interested, get them to offer us a lease. So far, they've said, yes, we want to do that. As soon as you can look into your crystal ball, tell us when the state's going to open up, we'll come in and deal with leasing. We don't have a relationship with them. They don't really give us any money or anything like that. In fact, I'll tell you, honestly, the money that's coming to the Steuben County Landowners Coalition comes from the Steuben County people, and that's it. I think we have received some bus rides to state events that probably were paid for by some gas industry people, but we don't really have any relationships with any of the gas companies, but we're sure looking to create some.
Thank you. My name is Gail Mitchell, and I have one question. I don't quite understand the Clean Air and Clean Water Acts that are, I think, on the federal level, and it's been my understanding that the gas companies do not need to abide by that. I don't know if that's changed, and I wondered if someone could explain that to me.
Gail, when the federal government established that act, dealing with clean air, clean water, specifically exempted from that act, which meant exempted from the control of the federal appointed agencies, were all of the oil and gas drilling operations everywhere in the country. What that means is that the federal government does not control the gas drilling, the state governments control it. That's why you will see differences in Pennsylvania as opposed to New York. You will see differences in West Virginia and Ohio, and you know, where is there gas drilling? Well, it started in Texas, it went to Oklahoma, Louisiana, there's been a lot of it in Wyoming, and now you've got it in Montana and the Dakotas. It's all over the place. Every state's got their own rules and regulations. Right now, it's our impression, after looking at the SGEIS, the SGEIS, the Supplemental Generic Environmental Impact Statement, that we are the most closely regulated, or will be when they finally open up. They're regulating things like the impact on songbirds in a field. They are really regulating the impact on, maybe to the point where it's going to impact on the profitability, we're not sure. But New York is very, very tight. Some other states are less tight, but they're all tightening up, all because it's in the best interest of the ecology. And did that answer your question, Gail?
Yeah, that helps. I'm sensing that maybe our state, New York State, is going to be the equivalent of the Clean Air and Clean Water Act. I mean, we're going to have that much regulation.
Well, we've got every bit or more authority. New York State's got all the authority to regulate the industry. The EPA, I got to be careful to keep my own biases out of this, but the EPA has been people have migrated to work for the EPA who have a particular interest in environmental issues, and they have swung to the left. The EPA did quite a job on hatcheting the gas industry about 2 years ago. They accused them of all kinds of improper things, blamed them for gas and water and stuff like that. As it was determined later, after the industry fought back a bit, is that they didn't use proper techniques, they didn't use proper methods, they've had to apologize. And so we have a political situation where you've got a federal agency that really appeared to be out to stopping an activity, because the EPA favors wind and solar. And they favor that at the expense of petroleum and gas, okay? And it's all because of global warming. They believe in global warming. They believe that the best thing to do for global warming is don't burn another gallon of gas. Don't burn any more natural gas. Because if you do that, then you're taking away from the money that could be allocated towards wind and solar. In a nutshell, that's what the issue is. Okay? So I'm happy that the EPA isn't involved. We're going to live with whatever DEC does. DEC is tougher than what the EPA has been.
Hi, Jane Pryor. We were part of a wind project that the NIMBYs were really, really vicious. And we haven't done much with fracking. This is our first meeting. But I am involved with a lot of people in some of the things I'm in that have already decided that fracking, without a doubt, should not take place for at least 20 years until we iron things out. I think this tape does a pretty good job, but one of the things, and I keep saying, I don't know, I haven't really looked into it, but one of the things that constantly comes up with them is how is the water ever useful again? They tell me it can't ever be, that you frack with, can never be used again. And they're worried about running out of water. And another one, they have another one that is that in Pennsylvania, supposedly, I have no idea, but this is what they're recruiting, one of their tools, is that people, the drivers, the truck drivers in Pennsylvania, empty that water in inappropriate places. And I would like an opportunity to enlighten them when I see them again, hopefully addressing those two issues. But we went through it with the wind. Cows got cancer in 8 months, and women had 4 or 5 menstrual cycles and all that stuff.
I can start that one out. There's no doubt, and you saw in the movie here, one of the gentlemen spoke to this, that the surface impact of natural gas exploration now with the horizontal drilling from single multi-well pads is the least surface disturbance of any energy, bar none. Much less than wind. It takes 50 windmills, large 400-foot tall windmills to make the equivalent energy over 30 years of the wells from a single 4-acre Marcellus pad. And every windmill takes this foundation the size of a house. Each one has a transmission line to it, which is typically underground, but that takes clearing, has roads to it. So natural gas is, bar none, the least surface impact. As far as the water situation, again, we are now recycling over 95% of the water that comes back to the surface. And it's directed into tanks under New York's proposed regulation. There are no open pits allowed for produced water. It has to go into sealed tanks. What we're doing is typically, because of the technology involved, we can easily filter that and then just reuse it on the next well. We mix it with more fresh water. It's a kind of a makeup, so that you use maybe 20% of the filtered water from that well on the next well. A certain amount of it does have to be further processed, but we have technology to do that. We typically can do distillation process, and you just end up with a salt cake that can be landfilled, for instance. And some operators are taking some of it to Ohio for deep well injection situations, and that is an EPA administered program. So as far as the water use, it's really, in this area, it's insignificant. I mean, it's 4 million gallons sounds like a lot of water, but you've got, I believe, 18 billion gallons a day flowing through the Susquehanna River Basin. You have 150 billion gallons a day going out to St. Lawrence every day to the ocean. And a full build out of